While others celebrate the wins,
Yes.
we celebrate the mud.
each episode has a special guest.
Tony-nominated actress, Broadway's Lily Cooper.
Tashir Zameda.
David A. Gregory.
Getting messy with muddy topics.
We are going to be talking about grief journey.
With hilarious moments
Now get over here.
And deep conversations.
I'm ashamed to even admit this, but this is what happened.
This is Into the Mud.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Into the Mud podcast. While others celebrate the wins,
We celebrate the mud. We're coming to you from the Barrel Lounge at the Mall in West Village.
my name is Drew King.
I'm Alex Human. We're so excited. We have a fun little, we love our little solo episodes. We're talking about a fun little thing today called
That we are experts at.
super duper experts called avoidance.
Yes.
Yes, nailed it.
Primarily avoiding conflict.
Conflict
Conflict avoidance.
avoidance, which we kind of joke about a lot, I feel like.
It's like deeply rooted into the fabric of my being.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
it's truly, yesterday was like the perfect example. Like,
Yeah, talk
we
about
have
it.
the joke. Okay. Well, so let's start with like what is avoidance, right?
Yes,
Avoidance
yes.
is like a conflict avoidance specifically is just when you just truly will do anything in your power to like accommodate and bend yourself around a situation so that you do not have to be confrontational or like
Anything and everything to avoid conflict.
every week we put out our clips and I texted you one yesterday that I was like, oh, what do you think of this? And do you like this one or should we do another one? And you were like, oh, love the clip. Is there any way that we could find a different clip, but also totally all good if not? Which is like, was the perfect little segue into this.
Yeah.
It's such a, like this, you know, I think there's like that universal joke of like, oh my God, everything was so good except
Yeah, it's a
you know,
compliment sandwich is what
the
people call it.
compliment
Being like, oh my God, I love that so much. It's amazing. If we could just maybe work or change a little bit of this, like I think that would be really helpful. But like
Yeah.
really, I love it. It's amazing.
Which I think, coming from the managerial perspective, a compliment sandwich can work in certain regards. That's how you want to
Sure.
deliver information to people sometimes. But when it comes to making like life decisions or like doing things, like how has conflict avoidance shown up in your life?
It shows up everywhere. So I'm like trying to hold two things. I'm like double fisting the cards in the coffee.
Cards in the coffee.
I'm gonna
Also,
put the
I just have
cards.
to.
You know,
I had a
cards
fountain
it up.
pen explosion today, which is why I look like this.
That
but-
gives me so much anxiety.
Does it really?
I was the kid in middle school and high school, you know, when you had to like perfectly wrap your textbooks in
Oh,
and
in
paper
the
bags.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were like.
I wanted it
impeccable?
to be perfectly clean and beautiful. You know how everyone would always doodle on their books and
You were like-
mark it up. I was so upset if any marks got on it, or if, like, and my friends knew it, so sometimes they would just like draw with a pen on it, and I'd be like, ha ha, and then go home and have to redo the book.
That is
yeah.
okay. That's a good insight.
Writing on my
into who-
hands. I know.
That's so.
But it's okay. I love it.
Oh
It's
my
great,
God! Oh my God! That
you know?
for you.
Yeah, I love that for you.
I love that for you. If there's any way that you could never do that again in my presence, that would be also
It would be
so
great.
good.
Okay, so how does conflict show up in my life?
Yeah.
Literally, you just witnessed it by me literally not knowing if I should. Do I hold on to this? Do I hold on to the mug? Do I hold on to both? I don't really know. Is it going to ruin the episode? That's partially anxiety, but conflict is
Partially
like,
anxiety,
it's for me, it comes up everywhere. But I have
paralysis. It causes
Paralysis.
It causes paralysis.
my conflict avoidance is saying yes to everything, saying no to nothing, and apologizing for anything and everything that I do. I have a girlfriend of mine who we were doing a show one time, and just anytime they were like, oh, Drew, can you go from stage left 4 to stage left right, or stage left 4 to stage left 5? I'd be like, yeah, sure, I'm so sorry, as if I was in the wrong place.
Yeah.
And I just was constantly apologizing. And one day she said to me, you know, if you were a superhero, your name would be the Apologizer. And I was like, yeah. You're totally right.
remember this was another thing. That I remember maybe like last year or something. We talked about how when you say no to something, it takes you a long time to get to that no, but then you'll offer, I'm so sorry I can't do this, and here's why I can't do it. which is something I stopped doing a few years ago, of offering reasons why I can't do things.
Okay.
So if I can't do something, I just say, I'm not available for that. Is there another time? Or if it's something I don't want to do, I'm so sorry I can't do it.
What got you to that point of power to be able to say no?
It's a language, so a few things. So I think it's a language switch. So I think it's harder, like when we talk about like behaviors and patterns and thoughts and things like that, it's easy to switch behaviors first and have thoughts follow it. Like you can't really control your thoughts. So if the thought is like, oh my God, like how am I going to say no to it? It's like, just say no to it. And then your thoughts will follow that. Like it's okay to say no to things. I want to like even back up even further, because the apology thing is a thing. I used to teach an all-female stand-up class, and something, it's like this idea, not that it's like fully gendered all the time, but there is this like among just women in any spaces, this need to apologize constantly. Sorry, I'm doing this wrong, or I don't think I'm doing this the way you asked me to do it, or sorry for speaking up. And I used to have a no apologies rule. So every time I heard the word sorry in class,
You would hit them.
I would hit them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was beating them.
Yeah.
Because they did deserve it.
They do deserve it.
They did deserve
Yeah.
it. But I would point it out, and it would always, in the first few classes, it would be like a ton all the time. And then just it's habit recognition also is like, okay, how often am I apologizing for doing something that like I don't need to be apologizing for? I didn't do anything bad here. Like you asked, anyway, so that's kind of where it started.
Did any of them ever apologize for apologizing? 'Cause
Yes.
I do that.
Yes.
They'd be like, I'm sorry. Oh my God, I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry. Yes.
Yep.
And I think when you have someone like kind of calling you on it, not in a bad way, and it wasn't like you can't do that. It was just like, just clock it. Just clock how frequently you are apologizing throughout your day. Because after I started doing that, I also started clocking how frequently in emails or in any sort of correspondence, I would offer language around like, I'm not sure if this will work, but like that kind of like, it's not firm language. It's not like assertive language.
Yeah.
And it leaves a lot of room for like dismissal. Just starting to change the way I like do emails, or even just the way like switching from sorry to keep you waiting to thank you for your patience.
Oh, yeah, it's a positive.
So just switching stuff around like that is such a helpful way to, and again, like you don't want to be a jerk. You don't want to be like, oh, I'm going to show up 20 minutes late to everything and thank everyone for their patience. But like this moving out of apologizing language is so helpful, and it just takes like just the practice of it. With scheduling things, right? Like I am a chronic overscheduler, and I don't want to say no to people. I don't want to miss out on opportunities.
FOMO, fear of missing out is real.
Fear of missing out is very real. Or if I do commit to something, I don't want to be like, oh, I can't do it anymore. But it's at the expense of my own health and wellness and sanity,
of course.
Right?
Yeah.
So now I do a better job of, if someone is asking me to do something that I'm like, I just will I'll tune into my body and be like, do I want to do this? Do I want to see this person? Do I want to do this thing? Do I want to take this show? Do I want to spend an afternoon doing X, Y, Z? If my body is like, if it's that initial like shock, I'll like sit and I'll question it. And then I'll just say, I can't do that. I don't offer the reason why, because it's quite frankly, it's none of their business why. I just can't do it. They don't need to know that I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
I just can't do the thing you're asking me to do.
Yeah.
And I think just even keeping it that simple is so helpful. Like it doesn't have to be like and here's why, and please forgive me. It's like, no, I can't. Give me another date. Because it also starts to set up this expectation on their end of like, okay, I'm just going to give you another date. Because I think when you start to give that laundry list of reasons why you can't do it, then it becomes, I don't know what it becomes, but it's just like, it's too much information.
It is too much information. It's also unnecessary.
Yeah.
But I do it all the time.
Yeah. What's behind it for you? Like what's your fear?
Well, it's conflict. It's part of me is I am afraid. So I feel like my biggest fear with conflict is that I am disappointing someone, that I'm upsetting someone, and that therefore they in turn will be upset with me. And then I guess that kind of manifests into the fear of rejection. So I think that's kind of what it generally boils down for me in that capacity.
Okay.
Because I'm afraid that a friend has invited me to do something on a Friday night and I'm slammed and can't do it. Or I have, here, I'm already trying to tell you what I have, like why I can't do it.
Right.
But if there's a reason why I can't do it, you're right. Instead of just saying, hey, I can't do this or I'm not available, can we pick a different date? That's better.
Yeah.
I feel like I need to spell it out so that therefore they'll have sympathy for me, being like, oh, you're just really burnt out, you're really tired, or you're sick, or you're whatever, that XYZ thing, which, I mean, 9 times out of 10, it's accurate. I'm telling them. But I think if it's less option for them to be mad at me, which my friends in my community are great. They would never be mad at me.
They're not going to be mad at you.
So it's fine. So I don't know why I still feel compelled to do so.
Yeah.
Even if I'm turning down an audition for a show. I feel like maybe my former agents were just really aggressive of like, well, why are you turning this down? But they would always push back. And so maybe
that's
in certain circumstances, there's reasons why I feel compelled to be like, I am saying no to this because of this. I know I should do it or I should come or blah, blah, blah. But it's a way to mitigate their angry, aggressive response right off the bat. So I think it's not a healthy habit because simply just saying no is enough.
Well, and think about when you ask people to do things and they say, I can't do it. You're not like ruminating over like, well, why? Why didn't you provide me an answer?
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
It's like, no, you're just like, okay, oh, you can't do the
Cool,
thing.
let's pick another day. It's so simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said a couple things that I want to come back to. Oh, scarcity, I think is, especially with when it comes to like work and jobs, like saying no to stuff and having your agents push back and being in this place of like, okay, but if I say no to this, does that mean the opportunities will stop coming? I think can also translate into like oh, if I say no to this friend 3 times, they're gonna stop asking me to hang out, and then it's like, well, then you can initiate. Like, I think there's always
there is
like
that fear,
there's that fear, and then there's the like, okay, you have that fear, but like, A, if you're saying no to a friend 3 times in a row, do you want to be spending time with that person is a good thing to ask.
Good point.
B, they might just be suggesting things that don't work for your schedule. So it's now your job to be like, these are the dates and times that work for me. Or they keep asking things. I just talked to my friend Chelsea about our friend Chelsea, where a friend of hers invited her to some like fancy swanky party. And she was like, to be honest, this isn't my vibe, but I still would love to see you. Do you want to get coffee instead?
Great.
So like just switching the terms of it, I think is also like just getting comfortable with like, I think it also comes down to getting comfortable with knowing what suits your life and lifestyle, which is different now than it was even 10 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't really want to go to bars to like meet up with friends anymore. I'd much rather go for a walk or do a coffee or like an exercise class or something that I'm already going to be doing in my daily life, then I'm like, come with me on this.
Yeah.
But the other thing, the shoulds was another thing that stuck out. Anytime I feel should with anything in life, I question it now. I'm
starting to question it. Yeah.
Because I'm like, where's this coming from? Should, by whose
standards,
account,
whose definition.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing I should be doing. I either want to do it or I don't want to do it. Like, there's no should.
Yeah. Where is conflict showing up for you in your life?
For me, yeah.
And I feel like we're going to keep going back and forth and being like, give me another example of how it shows up in your life.
It showed up for me this week in a major way
or conflict avoidance, sorry.
Conflict avoidance, yeah. Of being in a like casual dating relationship with someone for several weeks and realizing that it wasn't for me for several reasons, and knowing that I needed to end it and not doing it and pushing it off and asking all of my friends, what do I do? And turning to everyone and going, what do I say? How do I do this? Rather than just being like, you know exactly what you need to do. You're an adult. You can figure out how to do this. And then being like, okay, well, do I meet them in person? Do I call them on the phone or do I text? And then what I ended up doing was nothing at all and just avoiding talking to them, which...
Stewing in anxiety.
Which sat so poorly in me, which I was also proud of myself to get to the point of like, I finally did it when I hit the day where I was like, you don't feel good about yourself because this is not within your value system to be knowing that like this is not the person that you want to be and that you are still avoiding this because you don't want to hurt someone's feelings and you don't want to be the bad guy and you don't want to be the reason that someone else is in pain. Those were my like
Absolutely.
Those were my like I was so scared. I was like, but I think this person really likes me. I think they were looking for something more. And if I end it, first of all, get over yourself, Alex. Like,
For sure. We don't know exactly
we
what
don't
they're
know
thinking,
exactly what
what's in
they're
their head,
thinking, right? Like I had, some context clues.
Of course.
But B, the other thing is like, but what about what you want? And I think that's like the crux of like with like conflict avoidance too. It's I was like reading through. I have my old therapy book, and I was reading through like just from the beginning stuff
That book is so witchy looking.
It's very witchy, and
I
it's
love
like
it, with,
it's
like,
like
locks and
paint
leather, and
locks
there's a
and leather,
tree on the
just
front.
it was such a good like nice little sacred
love
space
it.
for me to
It's beautiful.
talk about getting touched as a kid. Sorry, had to. The episode's out now. Okay.
Yeah, we can talk about it.
We can talk about it now. I think just back to the conversation is like, I think also fear of retaliation, fear of getting like if I do something that upsets you, are you going to yell at me? Are you going to like be mean to me? Are you going to do something that is hurtful to me? Which I think, yeah, I mean, that's not fun to get,
No. Well, as we know, when it comes to dating and breakups, whether it's short-term, long-term, if it's casual, it is really hard to exit those situations. Either you're the one being dumped or you're the one doing the dumping, or it's mutual.
Right.
Either one of those paths is deeply uncomfortable and painful. It triggers insecurity. It triggers self-doubt.
Yeah.
And no matter where you are, if you're the dumper or the dumpy, it's just triggering.
Yeah.
So I think it's easier to avoid it.
Yeah.
Because you can put it in the back. I think this is where I keep saying that a lot of my conflict avoidance results in procrastination. So it's procrastinating I'm feeling uncomfortable about answering that email, so I'm just going to put it off.
Yeah.
I'm feeling uncomfortable about this breakup, so I'm just going to put it off. I'm feeling uncomfortable about money, so I'm going to wait to file my taxes.
Or not look at my bank account.
Or not look at my bank account, even though you know you're probably overdrawing. There are these like little different ways that for me, because I'm afraid of the conflict and the outcome of the conflict, I procrastinate it. And so I think that's what happens when you're in these dating situations, because it brings up deep feelings of fear, insecurity. Even if you're the one in this circumstance where you're the one initiating the conversation, it triggers am I a bad person? And then like you said, retaliation. Are they going to come back at me and say like, you led me on, you're a jerk, why'd you do this to me? We had so many dates, or blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And because you also cannot control somebody else's reaction or response to that, the way that they're going to be triggered.
Right.
So we avoid it because it's easier.
We totally do. And also thank you, because you were so helpful you helped me figure out how to do it. Which I think also gave me some language. I think part of why I was hesitant to do it, because I was like, I'm not really sure why I'm doing this. Just something feels off, and I don't really have the language around like how to do this. And it helped to just sit with my thoughts and be like, what do you like? What's working for you? What's not working for you? And then, ultimately, chatting with you and getting like some like solid language out to start with. But I think the other thing that did come up with it was a hard thing to send, but and I didn't feel great for that day. I just felt like,
it's icky.
It's hard.
It's
just hard. It's disappointing. But it's done now. It's done now. And
what was this person's response? Did they respond?
Oh, they responded. So it was, hey, thank you so much for your honesty. It's been great getting to know you, and and I hope our paths cross again.
Great.
perfect. Like, great. Love that. And here in my head, I'm inventing this, like, are they going to be so, like, are they going to say the right? It's always something I've been finding just with everything. Every hard thing that I've been like starting to tackle is like the buildup around what I think it's going to be is so much worse than what the actual outcome is. Like, so I wanted to ask what, like, when you have, like, if pushing off doing your taxes, right? You're like pushing it off, and then you have anxiety over it for weeks, and then you actually sit down to do it. And like, usually it's like the first 10 minutes are excruciating, but then it's like, oh, now it's done. Like, do you find that once you are completing these tasks that you're avoiding or having these conversations that you're avoiding, do you find that, like, what do you find on the other side?
It's always better.
Yeah, it's like always better.
There's always a sense of relief.
Yeah.
That's why when I catch myself procrastinating on something, I have to clock it and say, okay, why am I procrastinating? Is it what is the reasoning for this? And 9 times out of 10, I'm procrastinating because it's going to bring up uncomfortable feelings that I don't want to sit with.
Yeah.
Be it something, you know, really deep and intense, or something really basic like washing the dishes.
Like,
Yeah,
have
I
you
always
ever
feel better
found,
on the other
like,
side.
yeah, I can't think of a single event or hard conversation.
I have had some really sticky breakups,
Yeah. And
which you have too.
I have too. And I think,
And we're scarred by that, and that's why it reinforces the
Yes.
conflict avoidance.
Yes.
Because 9 times out of 10, things go fine for the
Right.
basic things, for the taxes, for the washing the dishes,
Right.
for the, you know, whatever. But
Right.
when you have to confront somebody else, another person, and deal with potential negative backlash,
yeah,
that's where it gets tricky.
totally. And still necessary, because
Still necessary.
because when I think about the alternative of, okay, let's say you didn't do that, where I would be,
Yeah.
and B, how much it forces you to kind of look in the mirror and come face to face with, like, what if I don't think we've talked about this on the podcast yet, but I'm doing this villain challenge that I've told you about. It's a really fascinating, it's a creativity workshop led by this woman, Vanessa Aldridge, and it's called the Villain Challenge. And it's about finding out what's really standing in the way of you and your, like, accessing your full creativity, right? And it's really about doing a lot of shadow work, figuring out what your biggest fears are, and finding an inner villain to help you conquer that fear or
Is it
get
to, like,
through
to
that.
personify the villain, and then you can direct all of your energy and
what would my
problems
villain
to that villain?
Yeah, because
Okay.
what would my villain be doing in this situation, and who
Okay.
is my villain, right? And so, like, my villain is so you have to find what your biggest fear is, and from there your villain is born, right? So my biggest fear, especially, that's been so helpful doing our podcast on the abuse and the medical stuff, my biggest fear is being perceived as dirty and inappropriate. That's my, like, biggest fear, is like, what if I show everyone who I really am and they say no, and I'm, like, shunned, right? Rejection,
Yep.
right? Like, that's my biggest fear. So my villain is born out of that, as this person who is this, like, says whatever she wants, doesn't care about the opinions of others, is dirty, is inappropriate, says the thing, does lean so far into all that, and is pushing me to be like, okay, so what if I am inappropriate? Like, that's helping me rewrite how I do my creativity, right? So how that relates to our conversation about, like, breakups or, like, conflict avoidance is, like, a sticky breakup presenting me with, like, oh, what if I'm a bad person? It's like, what if you did a thing that really hurt someone? What if you were a little selfish in that scenario? It's like, yeah, okay, I got to accept that.
And I have to confront it.
I have to confront it.
Yeah.
And that I'm not great at it yet, but learning how to accept all parts of myself, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So being like, okay, you know what?
Yeah.
You know what? That was not great. So we're going to do better next time. But you did the best you could in that moment.
With what you had.
You had.
Okay.
And I really did. But it wasn't perfect, because I'm a human.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, if I'm learning anything about any of the things that I'm doing, like, I think about the episode we recorded that took me 30 years to get to talk about that publicly. It's like, I was so nervous to talk about it, and now it's done. And it's
you did
like,
it beautifully.
Thank you.
I'm sure there was the fear. You were afraid. You were like, am I going to cry? Am I going to be emotional? Am I going to not know what I'm saying? Am I going to panic? And you were so beautiful, poised, and grateful, and it was beautiful.
It just came, and it feels so good to have it done now. And it's like, and now I feel more courageous to do whatever next thing. And that it's almost this like craving that, like, I'm not craving like discord or any like tumultuous situations, but I'm approaching them now with a little bit more wisdom of like, oh, I could learn something from this. Like, these are, in comedy we say, like, you learn more from a bad set than you do from a good set.
Oh yeah, same thing in dance.
In dance,
exactly.
It's with anything. Like, there's when you're not being challenged to think about what happened, you're not growing. And I think that's what conflict does, is it kind of challenges us to look at ourselves, look at how we react to things, and look at like, oh, this triggered me in a way that I wasn't expecting. Or like, why did this hit me so hard? So yeah, I don't know.
I think that's right though. It's like, it is putting a mirror up in front of you, and even what I have to remind myself is that even in the worst possible outcome, which rarely happens, but sometimes it does happen.
Sometimes it does happen.
You are still going to learn something about yourself, and it is still a growth opportunity.
Yeah.
So, for example, I had to go through one of those awful breakup situations with somebody.
Yeah.
Where I procrastinated it for a very long time, and then got to the point where I couldn't tolerate the uncomfortability of avoiding the conflict anymore.
Yeah.
And I just hit a wall, and then I finally broke up with this person, and I got a horrifying, terrible response.
Yeah.
This person was threatening suicide. They were self-mutilating and sending me pictures and saying, this is your fault, you did this to me. Threatening to jump off the George Washington Bridge, and saying that when the cops find my body, you need to know that you did this to me. Like, incredibly abusive and manipulative.
Yeah.
And of course, I know that that's not me. That's this person's response.
Of course,
but I was so young when this was happening,
right,
and vulnerable, and
I
have always been conflict avoidant.
Right.
That when that happened, of course, that ingrained in my brain that anytime I break up with someone, or someone breaks up with me moving forward, this is going to be what's happened. This will happen. I'm a bad person. I did this to, I took it in. But in the long term, like in that moment, I really got, engrossed in it. But then in the long term, I was able to say like, whoa, this is not accurate.
Yeah.
And then it actually gave me boundaries that I now know how to set with relationships moving forward.
Yeah.
It provided me a lot of information about certain red flags. It provided me a lot of information about where I let people manipulate me and take advantage of me because of my conflict avoidance.
Yeah.
So ultimately it ended up being this really incredible learning experience. It reinforced my friendships with my with my friends who had my back, and with my family. So there actually ended up being a lot of wonderful things that came out of it. And at the end of the day, I still keep in touch with this person because I know that this was a long time ago.
They were in a
very different chapter of time too, and this person has grown exponentially and has done a significant amount of work now. I wouldn't say we're friends, but we keep in touch, and I see that they are in a much more balanced, healthy state now.
Right.
So if anything, I was like, oh yes, it was the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
I avoided the conflict because I knew it was going to blow up, and the bomb blew up.
Yeah.
But I still grew and learned from that experience in a way that is helping me move forward throughout the rest of my life.
I love the thing, and again, it's exactly why we do this podcast, is sometimes the shit
really is the shit.
Really is the shit. It just blows up in your face. And there's no telling which scenario that's going to happen in. You just have to accept that sometimes you're just going to be in a bad situation, and how you deal with it is who your character becomes. And I think we also grow through experiences. We grow so much through that. It's so
I think it's also pretty remarkable the way that we deal. I still had poor patterns of behavior when it comes to dealing with conflict and the way that I avoid it. I still have them. I will be working through them for the rest of my life. But I think on the flip side, I'm grateful that we're having those experiences. And I talk about this with my therapist all the time, because you and I, having experienced varying traumas throughout our life, we had certain trauma, as Jamie Lee Curtis says, trauma responses to those things that went on in our life.
Yeah.
And the way that we dealt with them as a 5-year-old or as a 12-year-old or as a 14-year-old when we weren't fully formed adults and didn't know how to deal with them is very different with how we know how to deal with them now as adults who are autonomous, who we read, we write, we go to therapy, we interact with people, we're constantly challenging ourselves. We are much more emotionally equipped and intelligent to be able to deal with these things now. So although I still carry the baggage of I'm conflict avoidant, it's still in there from when I'm a kid, but I'm able to rationalize it now and be like, but wait, you're not a kid anymore. You are an adult and you can move forward with this and learn.
Absolutely. And I've noticed that as my self-worth goes up, my reasoning for conflict avoidance goes down. Because conflict avoidance for me a lot growing up was like, well, your needs come first because I don't deserve to have good things. So it doesn't matter if I don't want this because I don't deserve it. You just, whatever to make you happy, like I will bend and contort and do whatever I need to do to make sure that you get what you want.
That you're happy and not me.
Yes. Versus now being like, no, I deserve happiness. I'm an inherently good person. Just not because of anything I do, not because of my resume or whatever it is. I'm just an inherently good person. And I deserve to be happy and have boundaries and keep those boundaries. But that takes practice.
Well, I want to know, do you think you can pinpoint the roots of your conflict avoidance? In my research, I would like a lot of what they say on the interwebs is, it can come either from like a volatile household, or it comes from, challenges with your parents or your siblings, or challenges with, or trauma, any sort of trauma that has like taken away your autonomy.
Yeah, I think, my, and I want to say this with as much tact and respect as possible, because I know they both listen, but my parents did, they divorced, and there was some fighting growing up that I think was just really like, I just like would make myself very small around it. I would just be like, whatever I can do to avoid like getting in the middle of this or being like yelled at for not doing XYZ, like I'm going to do that, I think that's a super common thing for a lot of people, but that, when I think about conflict avoidance in particular with like arguments and things like that, that is, that's kind of, and then add on the unworthiness stemming from the other trauma stuff, like that's the fuel.
Yeah. That sounds like a big old pot of trauma. Results in that.
What do you know what yours is?
I do.
Yeah.
Mine's very specific. Of course it comes from being, I feel like I say queer every episode, but like being a queer kid and living in a world in which I'm constantly having to hide. Yeah. That's a big part of it. But I think the biggest part for me was my abusive stepfather, who from like a very young age, all throughout my teens, my stepfather was very unwell. I loved him. He was great. We had a great relationship when I was younger. And then probably around the time that I hit puberty, until like 18, when I left my house and moved to New York City, we like did not get along. But he was very, very volatile, very unreliable.
In what way?
He just was mentally unwell. He was like severely, severely depressed. He also was a lifelong, we've talked about this before as well, he was a lifelong heroin addict and started doing drugs at a very young age. So I think his, emotionally, he was a little bit stunted. I think he was, kind of trapped in the mental state of a child, essentially.
Yeah, yeah.
And so he was like very stubborn, really reactive and really responsive. He had a lot of like anger flare-ups, but he was also, I mean, I think because of those responses, he was like incredibly verbally abusive and to me, and I was his target. It was my sister, and then when my sister moved out of the house, he turned on me.
Got it.
So for me, it was, I learned from a very young age that I cannot push back, that I cannot have a voice, and that I don't have any autonomy, and my opinion doesn't matter. Because I would watch my sister get in fights with him, and he would get rageful and throw things against the wall and scream at her, and then she would react, and then she would fight back even more, and the fight would escalate, and get even worse. So I learned was, don't say anything.
Just absorb it.
Just absorb it,
Yeah.
let it be, and move forward. And so,
Also doesn't work.
also doesn't work,
Yeah.
but that was ingrained in me.
yeah.
And even like little instances where I tried to push back,
Yeah.
because he just was so verbally abusive all the time.
Yeah.
Anything I did, it was like, you're worthless, you're a piece of shit, you're selfish, you shouldn't be doing this, blah, blah, blah. So that's why I tried to never be home. That's why my high school superlative was most involved, because I was like, I have to do as many extracurricular activities as I can so I never have to be home.
Wow.
Because I never wanted to be in a room with him.
Yeah.
And whenever I was home, I had to lock myself in the room. Like I had to hide and
Well,
not be around
avoidance
him.
became your life raft.
It was my survival.
It was
my
again,
survival
it was like
tactic.
a survival tactic that worked.
Yeah.
That worked and also helped you.
Saved me.
It saved you.
It saved me,
It totally
exactly.
saved you, and
Yes.
it just doesn't
Yeah.
work anymore. So how can you maintain the things that
Yeah.
worked from it with, you know? But I think. Yeah, I think it had to have been so hard. I think everyone's like negative voice says like you're
yeah.
worthless. Da, da, da.
Yeah.
It's like to have that literally be an external voice that's saying these things directly to you is so hard to sever that, or like that takes such enormous growth to like push back against that and to like.
And as a child, for a child to be able to
Yeah.
to try, like a child can't push against that.
No.
That's an adult attacking a child. That's abuse.
And
so it's
well, and it's also like as a kid you're told like adults know. Adults have the information.
adults know better. So if he knows better and he says I'm a selfish piece of shit and that I'm garbage and I'm worthless, then like that has to be true.
That has to be true.
And that if I contest it and I fight back, it only gets worse.
Yeah.
So I had to absorb it to be like, you know what? I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I screwed up. I am terrible.
Yeah.
You know, whatever you need. It was diffuse,
Yeah.
and avoid conflict because
Yeah.
I didn't want to rage him and have it spiral and become this bigger thing.
Yeah.
I had to withdraw, minimize, shrink, and avoid conflict at all costs. So that was like that was my teenage years. And it's taking so much time and therapy and money to undo that.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's become this massive growth opportunity for me as well, to like be able to figure it out and dissect it and learn and see how to move forward through my life with that.
I think everyone's got their thing, you know, like it's like whatever the thing is that whatever you mislearned in childhood, right, becomes the like personality trait that might work for you later in life or might not work for you in certain ways. And it's like it is a lifelong. I think that's the cool thing, and the thing that I'm learning too is like it's not like, okay, and now I learned everything at 37 and I'm ready to take on the rest of my life. It's like stuff presents itself differently to you in different points of your life too, and it's always a learning process, and it comes up in new ways and different ways. Like I was like, oh, I'm pretty good with conflict after that really like terrible breakup that I just had, and then it was like, and then I just went right back to it, and I was like, oh God, what if
I don't know what to do.
I don't know what to do.
And
it's
it
like,
comes back.
It comes back.
Yeah.
It comes back in different ways. It manifests in different ways. But I think the thing also that I'm learning is like, you don't have to take it all on at once to like conquer it. It's like, what are little acts of, like
Of
say,
resistance.
next time you say no to something, like how can you be like, I'm not available for that, instead of like, here's why.
Yeah.
Just like little pushes forward is what get you to the place you want to be.
Yeah, I completely agree. But I'm really proud of us for getting to where
Nailing
we've gotten and
Yeah.
where we will go.
Yeah.
Because I think we're both learning, and growing. And it takes a lot to confront conflict head on.
Yeah.
And I'm nowhere near being good at it, but
Hard.
we're getting
It's
better.
hard. There's a reason. We don't like discomfort.
Yeah,
As
it's
people,
deeply
It's-
uncomfortable.
we don't like it. We
Correct.
like comfort.
Yeah.
So if you have something you want to email us. Email us info@intothemudpodcast.com with the conflicts that you're avoiding. And maybe we'll talk about it on a future podcast.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for tuning in.
Love you, friend.
Like, subscribe, love you. Like, subscribe, follow, and love you.
Like, subscribe,
And
love you.
Like, subscribe, love you. And we love you. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.